So today is Saturday, November 30th. It's a couple days before we get back after Thanksgiving break. And kind of due to a lack of time and an inability to really do any reviewing or tutoring sessions before the end of the quarter, I'm just going to do the same thing that I did for the last quiz, and I'm just going to go through the same exact quiz, and I'll just create a different version. And this version that I create will probably be completely different than the quiz. It'll be the same topics, but it's not going to be the exact same quiz. You'll have to know how to do translations, reflections, and rotations, but not necessarily the same ones that are on this quiz. So just keep that in mind. Or it might be. I don't know. I'm going to be quizzing you on all of them for sure in class, whether it's exit tickets or whether it's the retake. Anyway, all right. So here was the quiz that you took. There were a couple different versions. I'm just going to do one version. I'll also talk about, it'll sort of be a lesson, mostly just going through the quiz, but I will talk about the mistakes that kids made when I graded them. So the first mistake, let's do this. We can do red, I guess. So it says to reflect across the y-axis. So it looked like there were two main mistakes. One main mistake is people did the y-axis as this. That is not correct. We should know that is the x-axis. You've done graphing for probably 5 or 6 years now. The y-axis goes up and down. The x-axis goes left and right. And they're even labeled. You don't really have to even remember it. There's an x there, there's a y up there. So there's really no reason to not know which axis is the x-axis, which is the y-axis. And if you don't know, put a little time into it. Again, I keep telling you a lot of this stuff is just effort. This is effort. You didn't know which axis was the y-axis. You didn't put much effort into this quiz. So anyway, with that in mind, here's the y-axis right there. So that's the first thing we do. We say we darken the y-axis. So I told you go ahead and graph the points. I don't know if I started that in first period or second period or third or whenever it was, but it turned out to be a little easier, I think, if you visually saw it instead of just trying to write the coordinates down. If you didn't graph it and you had the correct coordinates, I didn't take off, but it just a lot of people were struggling when they weren't graphing it. So I think it was easier to graph it. So I'm going to graph it. So A is at 3, 4. So again, the first number is the X, second number is the Y. I'll use the quick example of the apartment building I lived in, the story about the woman that I almost married, which was a completely fake story. But the point was I always had to go left or right first because I had to get to the elevator first. Then I went up or down to wherever I was going. So 3 is my left and right number. So I always start at the origin. So I go to the right to 3. So that's there. And then I take the elevator up to +4. So that's how we put a point on a graph. Again, a lot of you are still struggling with that. There's that's something you just have to know. That's not something I can do lessons on. You're expected to know how to put a point on a graph. If you don't, do the IXLs that I've assigned, practice on your own. There's the first point. That would be point A. I guess I'll go ahead and label it A. Second point would be 1, comma 2. I'm not going to keep doing them all individually. That would be the second point, 1, comma 2. I think down here is probably the best place to label it. And then -2 would be left and then up to 3. So there's that one, and that is C. I'm going to go ahead and connect them and make a triangle. Again, I did not take off if you didn't do any of that. So triangle would look something like that. That is the pre-image. So we'll talk about that more in the next problem, but you have to understand how to tell a pre-image from the image, meaning the final image, but it's pre-image and image. Pre-image is the one you start with. It does not have the little tick marks that you see in, oh, it does not have the little tick marks that you see in all of these. That little prime mark, A prime, B prime, C prime. Those are on the image that we create. So again, the pre-image does not have those. The image that we create does have those, or that's already been created for us if they give us two images, like in the next problem we're going to do. So with that in mind, we are going to now, so I've already outlined the line of reflection is the y-axis. So that's the red line going up and down. We've put the 3 points on the graph. So now I'm going to graph it. You don't have to graph it if you can kind of figure the rule out. Basically, the points are just moving left and right. I take each individual point. So I'm going to start with B and I'll change it to blue. I go from B1 to the line of reflection. I always go from the point to the line of reflection. A lot of you went the wrong direction. From the point to the line of reflection. It's not always left, it's not always right. It depends on where the line of reflection is versus where the point is. In this case, I go to the left, which means I keep going and I go one more. That's where my B prime goes. B prime. Zoom in a little bit. So now, same thing. A, I go 1, 2, 3. I go toward the line of reflection. And then I go 1, 2, 3. That would be then where A prime goes. And now for C, I go toward the line of reflection. It's not left and right. It is toward the line of reflection, which in this case is a different direction. So I go 2 to the right, 2 to the left, and that is C prime. So if I connect those, let's see, we'll use a different color. I guess green will stand out enough. So I connect, oh wait, we don't want to do this. So actually I'll do this and then I'll make it green from there to there. Then from C prime. So I'm connecting all the points that have a prime. That's my image that I created if they have a prime. I'm going to change the color of them as well. So that one there will change to green, I guess. Yeah, I get here, maybe a sort of a bright green. Yeah, that'll stand out. Then we'll change this one. And then we'll change that one. So that triangle that I just created is the image that I created. I took the pre-image, the one that did not have any prime marks. It's the red ABC. And then I connected it. I'm sorry. And then I reflected it over the y-axis, which is the green triangle that you see. And you'll notice they kind of look like a butterfly almost. They're sort of symmetrical with the middle of it being the line of reflection, which is the y-axis. So now all you do is you just write in the ordered pairs. So A prime is -3, +4. Let me go back to the pen, and I guess I'll do that in blue. So -3, +4. B prime is -1, +2. I'm just writing these straight from the graph. So I'm looking at the point on the graph. B prime is at -1, +2. If you don't know how I'm doing that, again, you go left or right first. So we'll say for A prime, I go all the way to -3 and then up to +4. So my first number is at -3. My second number is 4. That's how I got that right there. So you should be able to figure them out for the other ones. So B is -1, +2. And C is +2, +3. So if you looked at it, I didn't ask you what the rule was for this, but there is a rule. If you look at and if you memorize rules, I'm fine with that, but just know there's a lot of rules between the rotations and the reflections to try to memorize. All we really did is move the points left and right. So the y values never changed. The original y value here was 4. It's 4 there. Then 2, then 2 there, then 3, then 3 there. And all that we really did with the x value is we just flipped the sign. We moved it to the other side of the y-axis. So if it started positive, it became negative. If it started negative, it became positive. So you'll just see that the original x was 3. Now it's -3. The original x was 1 there. Now it's -1. So they're, and make sure you understand they are not changing to negative. A lot of you are still saying that. They didn't change to negative, they flipped signs. Because if you'll notice, this one started negative and it became positive. So again, you have to make sure you think in terms of flipping signs or changing signs, not going to negative or going to positive. Because a lot of you are messing up the rules because you're thinking positive and negative. The question you always ask is, did the sign change? Not is it positive or negative? So that's how you do the first one. Got a little cluttered. You can go back and rewatch it if you need to, slow it down or something. So there. So that was the answers for that one. And again, I'm not saying you're going to get a reflection over y on the quiz. That I can guarantee you will not get reflection across the y. So just know it won't probably be that easy. It'll be something that's a reflection, though. Just make sure you draw the line of reflection in, and then you count toward the line of reflection, and then you stop at the line of reflection. Then you count again going to the other side. All right, so here, there wasn't a lot to this one. Some of you got it right, some of you didn't. The key was what a vector means. All we said is vector means how far did you move it and which direction did you move it. So one of the versions was wrong. It had something here. This was not supposed to be there, so I didn't catch that early. So it was to write the rule that was supposed to go with the last question like that. See how it's correct on this one? It's down there. One of the versions was wrong. It had this in number 2, which it shouldn't have. Still doesn't mean you can't answer it. You can still answer it. There is a way to write the rule. So I still counted the question. But a lot of you just didn't remember when we did this in class. It was a super fast thing I did, maybe 5-minute lesson. I think we did it twice, but it was fast both times. All vector means. So again, vector is just, so write a definition down. You should be taking notes when you watch these. Vector just means how far did it move and which directions. How far, I'm just going to abbreviate that, and which directions. And I'll show you what that means in a second. How far and which directions. All right, so a vector only applies to a translation. So translated, translate, translation, all those things. That's when we slide it. So we're not twisting it. If you'll notice on the picture, the C, A, B, all are in the exact, I didn't mean to do that. They are all in the exact same orientation. C is at the very top, B is on the right, A is on the left. That figure is not twisted, flipped, tilted, nothing. We just slid it. So the next thing you need to know, it's a little tougher to see on this probably than maybe the other version. You have to make sure you understand which. You have to understand which image is the original, which direction did we go? So here's where those prime marks come in. We went from the one without the prime marks to the one with the prime marks. That is extremely important because that's how you determine what your values are. Well, it's how you determine whether they're negative or positive. The number part doesn't really change, but the sign does change. So you make sure you look for that if you see what, and you will see that again, I guarantee you, whether it's on the retake or whether I just give you a quick exit ticket on it. And it's also on the district test, I think, somewhere. So anyway, some of that. So now that I know which direction I went, I'm going from the one without the prime marks, so the one in the lower right, to the one in the upper left with the prime marks. So all I have to do is just figure out how far did each point move. I don't even need to test each point because they'll all be the same. So I can pick any point. I'm going to just pick A just because A to me is just kind of the easiest. It's sort of out on the end. There's nothing in the way. Like if I use B, then I'm going kind of through the images and I don't really want to do that. C, I would kind of go through the images, possibly. If I went left first, I would. If I went up, I wouldn't. But A to me is just easy. It's just nothing's going to interfere. It doesn't matter which one you choose. I'll probably show you all of them. So from A, I just count how far left do I go? Because again, your first value is always your left and right number, just like X is your first value. So I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I have to go 7 to the left, and then I'm directly under the A prime. Then I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up. So here's where you have to understand which numbers or which signs we have for those numbers. If I'm going to the left, going this way, kind of like when we do rise and run, I'm going toward the negative part of the x-axis. So that means the 7 is a negative number. So I would write in here -7. That's my first value for the vector. So again, we're trying to figure out what was the vector for the translation, like meaning how far did it move and which direction? Well, to the left is -7. Up, which would be the y value, well, up is positive. If I'm going up, I'm going toward the positive values, the positive y values. So that means I have a +5. Again, kind of like rise and run. Going up for rise is positive. So that's the answer. That was all there was to it. A lot of you got the numbers right, but you put them either in the wrong position. Some of you put the X for the Y and the Y for the X. Some of you didn't get the negatives correct. Some of you went in the wrong direction. You didn't go from the pre-image to the image. You went the other way. So again, that's all there is to it. If you need to watch that again, watch it again. But know which way you're going. Again, I went this way because of where the prime marks are. I always end on the one with the prime marks, those little marks. And then I just have to count how far I go. Going to the left is negative, to the right is positive, down is negative, up is positive. All right, so then the last question, and we didn't do as well on this as I was hoping. Let me zoom out, I guess. Oh, this is gonna be a tough one to do, probably. Let's see. I'll figure out how to do it. So, and I'm totally fine with what some of you did. Oh, if this is gonna, yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out how to do this one. So it says rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise and write the rule. Again, I didn't make you in the original classes graph it. The graph was sort of cut off, so I actually told some of the later classes don't even worry about graphing it. Some people still tried to do it, which was fine, but regardless of how you did it, and on the retake, I'm going to make you write in the coordinates for the final answer. So I'm going to label it. So I'll just show you how it's going to look on the retake. There'll be like an A, B, C. And then I will probably give you, I don't know. I really want you to know how to put a point on the graph. So I don't know if I'll give that or not. So anyway, I'll tell you what they are though, so you know how to figure it out. So point A is at -5, 4. So we go left to -5, then up to 4. Point B is at -4, 2. And point C is at -1, 2. So they're the 3 points for the image that I graphed. Let's see. Let me actually tell you what, maybe if I do this, it'll be easiest. I'm going to just do this on another page. So we talked about when we do a rotation, there's a 3 or 4 step process. So it's going to have a little bit of that. Just ignore this blue part that you're going to see in it. All right, so the first process is I have to know which direction I'm turning it. So that's the clockwise and counterclockwise. So what is going on? Why is it? There we go. So I have to know which way I'm turning it. I hate it when this doesn't cooperate. There we go. All right, so again, ignore this little stuff over here. That shouldn't be there. It's just the fastest way for me to do this. So Counterclockwise. I'll draw this in. Look at the clock on the wall. A lot of you went the wrong way. I don't know if you went the wrong way because you thought it said clockwise or counterclockwise and you didn't really read it well, or if you just didn't know which way to go. Clockwise follows the second hand like that. That's the direction the second hand goes. So that is clockwise. Well, if that's clockwise, then counterclockwise would be the opposite. So you can start at the top again and go around the other way. It is not a left or right or up or down thing. It is a circular direction. So if you need to use your finger in class and trace what the second hand is doing and then reverse it if you need to, and then keep your finger moving and move your finger straight to the graph that you're about to turn, do that. Because way too many of you, I think, went the wrong direction. And just make sure you read the question and see if it asks for clockwise or counterclockwise. So now that I know, oh, so this particular problem, what did it say? It said counterclockwise and then it said 90. So that's the second part. How far is 90? Well, you should all have that down. I think most of you do. If you don't, you have to study. You got to study if you don't know these things. 90 degrees, we said, is one turn of the graph. It's 1/4 of a circle. So 1/4 is one turn. 180 would be two turns. 270 would be three turns. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to turn it again. So clockwise is this one up here. So this is counterclockwise. I'm going to abbreviate it. Counter and then clockwise, CW. So I'm going to be turning it around this direction. So keep my finger going. I'm going that way. So that means I'm turning it around this way. That's the direction. Turning it from, I'm going to grab this little thing at the top and spin it around, going to the left and then down and then right and then up. Again, it's hard to show you that on a screen, but so I grab this thing at the top. Well, I gotta do that. Grab this thing at the top, turn it once to the left. That's your answer. That's it. There's nothing else you need to do except, and a lot of you just wrote it sideways, which I was more than fine with that. That'd be what I would tell you to do. Just write those ordered pairs. But again, ignore the numbers. You know how a graph looks. On a graph, these values are negative x's. These are positive x's. Ignore what it says on this graph. I don't care that it says negative on the right and positive on the left. You have to ignore that. We turned the graph. You have to imagine it's just a normal graph. Negative on the left, positive on the right. Positive up here, negative down here. That's the way a graph works. You just have to remember that. And then you have to know how to put, pull the X and the Y off a graph. So if that's the case, this point C, so I'm going to write C prime, would be at -2. So I'm looking right here. That would be at -2 and then -1. And then I'll just go to B, I guess. B prime. And again, I don't care where it started. I'm not even looking at the original. If you have like the original on another copy, that's great. But it doesn't matter. This is the answer. I'm just writing down these 3 points. So that's -2, -4, and C prime. Whoops, I'm sorry, A prime. Scratch that. Already did C. Is what? -4, -5. So though that's your answer right there. Well, that's part of the answer. There's a second part which some of you didn't see. So that's your three ordered pairs. You just turn the graph however you need to turn it and write down the new ordered pairs, the new prime for the image from the pre-image that we started with. So I'm just going to pick, I guess I'll write all of them. That's fine. So now I'm going back to the original quiz. Now that I showed you how to do it. So A prime, we said was -4, -5. B prime was -2, -4. And C prime was -2, 2, -1. So just really quickly, if you think about what happens, if you understand that counterclockwise would move this image down into this quadrant, you should know every X and Y is negative in that quadrant. That quadrant's the all negative quadrant. X's and Y's are negative. So if you have any positive answers in your final points, your final A prime, B prime, C prime, you did something wrong when you turned it. Again, that if you think about those kind of things, it's kind of helpful just understanding where the image will land. And you should always know what the sign of your X and your Y be. If the image lands over here, your X is going to be positive and your Y is going to be positive. If the image lands over here, your X is going to be positive and your Y is going to be negative. If the image lands where this one started, so if it started somewhere else and it lands up in the upper left, then your X will be negative, your Y will be positive. So just knowing where the image is going to land will kind of tell you the sign of the numbers. So now the last part of this is it said, what is the rule? A lot of you, I don't know if you saw that. It wasn't, some of the versions didn't have this written down there. I told you to move it down there in later classes, but I'm going to be giving you another chance at this, maybe even in class. I might give you another shot on the next quiz. So all we do to determine what happens, and a lot of you are doing something kind of weird if I don't write it for you, I guess. You're getting the signs wrong on the starting values. The starting values are always X and Y. We always start with a positive X, positive Y. It doesn't matter where the image starts. It doesn't matter that this original image right here. So wait, actually, let's do it this way. It doesn't matter that this original image starts with it. Did not mean to do that. Doesn't matter that the original image up here starts with a negative X and a positive Y. So all of the X's right here, in red, all of the X's are negative. That doesn't matter. When we do a rule, we always start with just like the X and the Y. That's just the way it works. You start with your whatever your original X and original Y are. That's just means your X and your Y. Then you determine you determine two things. Did they switch places? So that's your first question. Did they switch places? Well, if I look at it, yes, they did. The 4 went there and the 5 went there. So that means I write in Y comma X. Now, the next question is not anything about positive or negative. A lot of you are still doing that. Like I said before, I don't care if it's positive. I don't care if it's negative. My question that I ask is, did the sign change? So again, all right, I'll rewrite that. So we said they switched places. So when the X value went to the back, did it switch signs? Well, no, it's still negative. So I just leave this X right here as X. It didn't change signs, so I don't do anything to it. Now I say, well, when the Y went to the front, did it change signs? Again, not positive or negative. Did it change signs? Well, yeah, it did change signs. So if I say yes, that's when I put a negative in front of it. So the Y went to the front and it changed signs. And that's the answer for the rule part. So you have your A prime, B prime, C prime. You have how the rule works. Like I said, because it was a little confusing on some of the version or one of the versions on the original quiz, I'm probably going to be giving you these 3 questions, or at least probably giving you all 3 on your next quiz. We'll do an early quiz that'll have one new quiz on it, and that will have this quiz repeated. So make sure you watch this video, and I'll tell you in class to watch this video so you're ready. So take advantage of it that you're getting a free retake again, second time this quarter.